Avery Lane didn't flinch when her mother told her that her failure was becoming contagious. She only offered a small, tired smile and signed the $2.5 million transfer for the new house her family had picked out, without asking her, without thanking her. They moved through the property earlier that morning with excitement she wasn't invited to share. "This one has 6 bedrooms," her sister Maddie said, running her palm along the polished staircase. "Plenty of space for a real family." Avery had stood quietly in the foyer, an afterthought in the home she had just paid for. No one hugged her. No one said they were proud. They counted bedrooms, not blessings. When she didn't defend herself, didn't correct the cruel jokes slipping between them, they laughed, sharp, metallic laughter that scraped against her ribs. Later that week, when they held a family meeting about her life choices, it quickly became a shakedown. "You need to be more responsible," her mother, Karen, demanded. "Your income isn't guaranteed forever." Avery folded her hands in her lap, hiding the sting. They didn't know she had already filed a court summons with her attorney. They didn't know the woman they were shaming had finally reached her breaking point. She was 33 years old, and the cracks in her life were beginning to show, but they weren't the kind her family imagined. They weren't signs of collapse. They were signs of emergence. A Tuesday afternoon at 4:17 p.m. became the moment Avery Lane's 8-year career ended. There was no meeting, no face-to-face explanation, just a calendar notification from HR titled Organizational Update. At 4:20 the real email arrived. Subject line: Your transition. Avery stared at it while the fluorescent lights above flickered faintly. "A masterpiece of polite betrayal," she whispered to herself as she read phrases like restructuring, right-sizing, and valuable contributions. But she knew the truth. This wasn't restructuring. This was scapegoating. The Hawthorne Initiative, a high-stakes project she had warned her boss about, was collapsing under the weight of his decisions. And he needed someone to carry the blame. Nathan Hale had smirked weeks earlier as he overrode her recommendations. "Trust me, Avery. High risk, high reward." Now the only reward was the sound of his laughter echoing from his glass office as she packed her things. The final slide of her 80-page strategy deck still glowed on her laptop screen, full of data, forecasts, and solutions. Solutions Nathan had stolen, ignored, or twisted beyond recognition. She saved the file under a new name, Truth Unknown 1. "You'll need this someday," she whispered. She placed her noise-canceling headphones, her favorite pen, and a framed photo of the Maine coastline into her bag. No dramatics, no tears. She left the company laptop exactly where it sat. Then she walked past Nathan's open door. He didn't even look up. The revolving glass doors released her into the cold air outside, and for the first time in years, the breath she exhaled felt like her own. Avery sat in her car for 10 long minutes, watching the digital clock shift from 4:58 to 5 o'clock as if marking the death of one life and the birth of another. She hesitated before dialing her mother. The instinct to call Karen Lane in moments of crisis was old, familiar, and foolish, and she knew it. But reflex is not reason. "Mom," Avery said when the call connected, her voice soft. "I lost my job today." Silence stretched, then a long, disappointed sigh. "Oh, Avery," her mother murmured. "I told you that company was too demanding. You chase things you can't hold on to." Avery stared at a crack stretching across her windshield. "It wasn't my fault," she whispered. "Nathan ruined the project." Karen clicked her tongue. "You always blame someone. Why don't you call Jake? He's stable. He has benefits." Jake Miller. Her ex-boyfriend whose idea of excitement was adjusting his 401k. "I'm not calling Jake," Avery said. I need time." Her mother's tone hardened. "Time won't pay the bills, Avery. Be sensible." The call ended abruptly. Her phone buzzed again. "Maddie, I heard what happened. My boyfriend's company is hiring for data entry. Entry level, but it's a job." Avery stared at the message. 8 years of managing million-dollar accounts, and her sister offered her data entry. Then Tyler called. "Maybe it's a sign," he said. "This whole career woman thing isn't working. Maybe focus on finding a husband. Avery hung up, not in anger but in clarity. Their silence drained her. Her silence freed her. That Sunday, Avery nearly skipped family dinner. She sat in her apartment rehearsing excuses. Flu, flat tire, terrible migraine, but each one felt like surrender. And she refused to give her family another story to weaponize. So she drove the 20 minutes to Crestwood, where her parents' house gleamed under warm porch lights. Inside, the table was already set. Her mother smiled thinly. Her father folded his newspaper. Maddie whispered something to Tyler that made him snort. "Oh, Avery, you're here," Karen said, wiping her hands on a spotless apron. "We're so proud you aren't letting your situation drag you down." Avery took her seat and noticed 2 empty chairs placed carefully on either side of her, as if unemployment required social distancing. Dinner felt like a performance staged for her humiliation. Her father started with financial advice. "You'll need to be careful with money now. You're not on a big salary anymore." "Stretch what you have," Karen added quickly. "Water down your dish soap. 1 part soap, 3 parts water. Lasts 4 times longer." Maddie nodded earnestly. "Also, walk everywhere. Save gas. It's good for you." Tyler chimed in, mouth full. "Cancel Netflix and Spotify. Use mom's accounts. No point wasting money if you're jobless." Avery smiled faintly. They believed they were offering help. But every word chipped away at her dignity. They weren't lifting her up. They were pulling her down to match the limits they lived within. To them, ambition was arrogance. Failure was proof she had flown too close to a son she didn't deserve. She ate quietly, spooning cold peas into her mouth, memorizing every familiar expression of condescension on their faces. After dinner, Avery drove home in silence. Her hands trembled, not from anger but exhaustion. She stopped by Patel's Market, a corner store she'd visited every Friday for years. Mr. Desai looked up, surprised. "Miss Avery, it's not Friday," he said kindly. "Rough week," she admitted, handing him a $10 bill. He nodded gently and reached for a Mega Millions ticket. "Sometimes the map is not the land," he said, sliding it across the counter. "You will find your way." Avery offered a weak smile and tucked the ticket into her coat pocket. The next morning, she forgot about it entirely. She watered down her soap as instructed, updated her resume, refreshed job boards, and tried to sleep through the suffocating quiet of her apartment. On Saturday, she finally remembered the ticket. She opened her laptop, navigated to the lottery website, and unfolded the slip absent-mindedly. The winning numbers flashed. 14, 22, 30, 49, 51, Megaball 9. She compared them lazily. 14, 22, 30, her heart fluttered. 49, 51. Her breath caught. Megaball 9. The room seemed to tilt. Her coffee mug slipped from her hand, splattering across the table. No, this can't be real," she whispered, comparing the lines again and again. $120 million. $70 million after taxes. Avery sank to the floor. At first she laughed, a wild, breathless sound. Then tears spilled, unstoppable. She cried for the late nights, for the stolen credit, for the judgment disguised as love. When the storm finally passed, she found herself whispering the same words over and over. "It's over now." Avery didn't sleep. She paced her apartment until dawn, checking the numbers again, terrified the universe would correct itself and tell her she'd misread everything. At 8:07 a.m., she finally called the state lottery office. The woman who answered sounded calm, almost too calm for Avery's shaking breath. "Yes, ma'am," the representative said gently. "You are the confirmed jackpot winner." Avery pressed a hand to her chest. "What do I do now?" "First," the woman replied, "keep the ticket safe. Do not sign it yet. We will schedule a private appointment at our downtown office. Only tell someone if you absolutely trust them, Ms. Lane. Truly trust them." Avery ended the call and stared at her phone. Who could she trust? Her family. The same people who mocked her career, pitted her unemployment, and treated her ambition like a malfunction. The silence answered for her. She slipped the ticket into a hardcover novel, A History of Quiet Women, and hid it under her bed. For 2 days she barely spoke. On Monday morning she hailed a taxi downtown. The driver hummed quietly, unaware that he was transporting a woman whose life had just detonated in secret. At the lottery office, 2 security officers escorted her to a private room. The woman from the phone, Ms. Green, greeted her with a warm but cautious smile. "Congratulations, Ms. Lane," she said softly. "You are now one of the wealthiest individuals in the state." Avery exhaled shakily. The words didn't feel real. She wasn't sure they ever would. Within hours, Avery sat across from a financial advisor named Mr. Weston, an older man with a silver beard and eyes that carried both wisdom and warning. "Let's begin with your debt," he said, sliding a pad toward her. "Mortgage, student loans, credit cards." Avery shook her head faintly. "Just life." "Not anymore," he said. "Today that ends." He tapped the folder in front of him. "This is your roadmap. Rule 1. Don't announce your win. Don't buy anything flashy. Don't tell anyone who might leak it." Avery swallowed. "So, no new car?" "Not yet. Let silence be your protection." He leaned forward. "Rule 2. Open a trust account quietly. Then hire an attorney to claim the prize on your behalf. You'll stay anonymous. No one needs to know until you decide they should." Avery nodded slowly. "And Rule 3. Mr. Weston's voice softened. Disappear for a while. People will come from everywhere. Family, friends, co-workers, strangers. Everyone will want a piece of you. If they can't find you, they can't drain you." She exhaled, trembling. "Disappear," she repeated. His warning didn't frighten her. It freed her. 3 weeks later, Avery Lane vanished. At least, that's how it appeared. She changed her phone number, deleted her email, erased her social media, and moved into a quiet penthouse rented under a new LLC name. She hired a small security firm to manage her privacy and paid her leases months in advance. She didn't buy jewelry or designer clothes. She didn't travel or splurge. She just breathed. For the first time in years, she heard her own thoughts clearly. One night, she stood on her balcony overlooking the glowing skyline and whispered, "This is what freedom feels like." 2 months later, the news broke. Anonymous Crestwood resident wins $120 million Mega Millions jackpot. Avery's new phone, known by almost no one, exploded with notifications anyway. Her sister Maddie posted on Instagram, "If that's Avery, she better not forget her family." Tyler tweeted, "Some people get lucky once and think they're above everyone." Her mother called every relative. "I told you she'd turn things around," Karen bragged. "She's always been blessed." Avery watched the chaos unfold from her penthouse couch, barefoot, wrapped in a soft blanket. She didn't comment. She didn't defend herself. She poured a glass of wine and murmured, "Let the games begin." That afternoon, Maddie went to Avery's old apartment. The landlord shrugged. "She moved out a month ago. Paid 6 months ahead just to leave." Maddie stormed off, frustrated. Later that evening, Avery's phone rang, her mother. The first call in weeks. "Sweetheart," Karen said, voice syrupy. "I heard a rumor. I know it's probably not true, but..." "What rumor, Mom?" Avery asked, knowing exactly what was coming. "Did you win the lottery?" Karen said quickly. Avery let the silence breathe. "It's true," she replied softly. The line went dead quiet. Then her mother's voice returned, transformed. "Oh, Avery, we're so proud of you. You should come home for dinner Sunday. We can celebrate properly." Avery looked at her reflection in the glass. Her reflection didn't flinch. "Sure," she said calmly. "Sunday works." She ended the call and smiled. Not warm, not cruel, but certain. Her family had no idea they were stepping into a conversation they weren't ready for. Sunday arrived crisp and bright. Avery pulled into her parents' driveway in a sleek black Tesla Model X. Her family stood on the porch, pretending not to stare. "Look at that," Maddie whispered. "She really bought it." Avery stepped out wearing a tailored white suit and dark sunglasses. She looked untouchable. Her mother hurried forward, plastering on a smile. "Sweetheart, you look beautiful. You didn't need to rent such a fancy car." "It's mine," Avery replied calmly. The silence snapped like a twig. Inside, the dining table was set the same as always, but nothing felt the same. Avery wasn't sitting as their disappointment. She was sitting as their mirror. Dinner began awkwardly. Maddie asked too many questions. Tyler hinted about a business idea he'd been developing. Their father joked about retirement. And Karen, she smiled like a politician. "Now that you're in such a blessed position," she said lightly, "maybe we could all make some family investments together. Something everyone could benefit from. A new house, perhaps. One we can all enjoy." Avery sipped her wine slowly. "You already have a house, Mom." Karen waved this away. "Yes, but it's getting old. A woman of your success should have something bigger, for the family." Avery smiled faintly. "Funny. I thought success meant independence." The table stilled. Maddie forced a laugh. "She's changed." "No," Avery said, her tone sharp as glass. "I just stopped apologizing." The message landed hard. By dessert, the masks had cracked. Her family's friendliness thinned into frustration wrapped in politeness. Tyler leaned in. "You know, Avies, I've been thinking, we could start something together. A logistics business. You fund it, I manage it." Avery lifted an eyebrow. "You manage it?" "Of course," he said quickly. "I'm good with people." Maddie chimed in. "And I do the marketing. You know how good I am on social media." Their mother nodded with approval. "Now that's a beautiful idea. Family unity." Avery set down her fork. "I think I've overseen enough things for one lifetime." The stillness was instant. Karen's smile flickered. "Avery, don't be defensive. We just want you to stay grounded. Wealth can make people lose themselves." Avery leaned back, her eyes cold but calm. "I didn't lose myself, Mom. I finally found her." No one responded. Maddie took a long sip of water. Tyler fiddled with his napkin. Her father cleared his throat. "We're family. Family looks out for each other." Avery nodded slowly. "Then where were you when I was losing everything?" Silence. Heavy. Accusatory. True. After dinner, Avery lingered by the hallway portraits. One photo, a Christmas picture, her smile tight, her mother's hand gripping her shoulder, felt like a ghost from a life she had outgrown. Karen joined her quietly. "You don't have to shut us out," she said. Avery turned to her. "Love doesn't sound like judgment, Mom. And it doesn't feel like control." Karen's lips trembled. "We only wanted what's best for you." "No," Avery said softly. "You wanted what made you comfortable." That night, Avery drove home with the windows down, her heart steady. She was done shrinking. She was done performing. And she was finally free. The next morning, Avery woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She called her attorney Mr. Cole, a man known for being calm even when handling chaos. "Sell the Crestwood house," she said without hesitation. He paused. "Your parents' home?" "Yes," Avery replied. "It's under my name. Paid off 5 years ago. They never noticed." Mr. Cole cleared his throat. "Do you want them informed?" Avery stared out her window at the city skyline, glowing and distant. "Not until it's sold." 3 weeks later the house was gone. Sold above asking price to a buyer from Oregon. The funds went directly into Avery's trust. Quiet, secure, unreachable. That evening, Karen Lane called in a panic. "Avery, the house. What have you done?" Avery's voice was steady. "I sold it, Mom. It belonged to me." "Where are we supposed to live?" her mother demanded. "In one of the rental properties I bought for you," Avery replied. "I moved your things this morning." Karen gasped. "You had no right." Avery closed her eyes briefly. I had every right, Mom. I just stopped asking for permission. For days, the calls didn't stop. Maddie cried on voicemail, Tyler raged. Richard left messages that began calm and ended heated. Avery blocked none of them. She simply did not respond. Instead, she spent her mornings at a quiet harbor cafe, writing plans for something entirely new, a foundation for women who had been underestimated and undervalued like she once was. She called it the Lane Initiative, reclaiming her family name on her own terms. Grants, mentorship, legal support, startup funds, everything she never received she would give. This was her new beginning. And it had nothing to do with them. One afternoon, while reviewing grant proposals, Avery received a handwritten letter. The envelope was ivory, the cursive familiar. Her mother's handwriting. Avery opened it slowly. Avery, the letter began. I don't understand you anymore. We were never against you. We were afraid of being left behind. Please don't forget where you came from. Avery folded the letter gently and set it aside. She didn't hate her mother. She just couldn't keep living under her fear. That evening, she placed the letter inside her journal and whispered, I won't forget. I just won't go back. Months passed. The Lane Initiative grew quietly, funded anonymously through the trust. Women from across the state sent emails filled with gratitude and second chances. Avery read every one. Stories of layoffs, divorces, failed businesses, workplace discrimination. Women who reminded her of herself. She realized something unexpected. Helping them healed her in places she didn't know still hurt. One morning, while scrolling through the news, she froze at a headline. Parker and Rowe consulting files for bankruptcy amid internal fraud probe. Below it was a photo of Nathan Hale being led out in handcuffs, confusion replacing his usual smug confidence. Avery exhaled slowly. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Closure. Karma doesn't rush, she whispered. It walks. She closed her laptop and turned back to her work. The past no longer needed her attention. The future did. A few weeks later, Avery attended a charity gala. Not as a celebrity, not as the mystery jackpot winner, but as an anonymous donor quietly funding programs that mattered. She wore a simple black dress, hair pulled back, presence soft but unmistakably strong. During the program, a young woman took the stage to speak. Her voice trembled at first. Last year I was fired unfairly. I didn't know what to do. Then the Lane Initiative gave me a grant. It saved my life. Avery felt her throat tighten. The woman continued. Whoever started it, thank you. No cameras turned toward Avery. No spotlights. No attention. But that gratitude, raw and genuine, struck deeper than applause ever could. After the gala, Avery stepped outside into the cool night air. The lights of downtown shimmered across the pavement. For a moment, she stood still, letting the breeze lift her hair and the solitude embrace her. She had spent years chasing validation, bending under criticism, shrinking under disapproval. Now she chased nothing. She answered to no one. She simply existed, and for the first time that was more than enough. As she waited for her car, she overheard two women whispering excitedly about the anonymous donor who had funded half the event. Avery smiled quietly. They had no idea the person they described was standing inches away. She didn't need them to. She finally understood the difference between attention and impact. She chose impact. Then one evening her phone rang, a number she hadn't saved but somehow recognized. Her mother. Avery hesitated, then answered. Karen's voice sounded smaller than usual. Avery. Your father's been sick. Nothing serious, but it scared me. Avery's chest tightened. I'm sorry to hear that. He wants to see you, her mother continued. He's been asking for you. Avery closed her eyes. A version of her, maybe the old her, would have gone immediately. The new Avery weighed the request carefully. After a long silence, she said, I'll come tomorrow. That night, sleep refused to come. She lay awake thinking about the years behind them, the words that built walls, the silence that held them in place, the fear that shaped both sides. The next day, Avery drove to the rental home she purchased for her parents. Her father sat on the porch, thinner but smiling when she approached. "Well," he said softly, "the prodigal daughter returns." Avery smiled faintly. "Something like that." He patted the bench beside him. "Sit." He cleared his throat. "I heard what you've been doing. Helping women. Starting things. Your mother pretends it doesn't matter, but she keeps the articles." Avery blinked. "She does. She's proud," he said gently. "She just doesn't know how to say it." Karen stepped outside with a tray of tea. The three of them sat quietly for a while, air thick but peaceful. "You've changed," her mother said finally. "No," Avery replied softly. "I just stopped hiding." Her mother's eyes glistened. "I didn't know how to love you right," she whispered. "I thought control meant protection." Avery's voice cracked. "And I thought silence meant respect." Together they let the weight between them fall. As dusk fell, Avery rose to leave. Her father gripped her hand gently. "You did good, kid," he said. "You made something out of nothing." Avery's eyes softened. "I just followed what hurt until it stopped hurting." Her mother touched her arm lightly. "Will we see you again?" Avery nodded. "Yes. But this time not as your failure." Karen swallowed. "As our daughter." Avery shook her head gently. "As your equal." She walked back to her car, the same road that once felt like escape now feeling strangely like return. But this time, she returned with peace rather than desperation. Back at her penthouse, Avery stood by the windows as the city lights flickered below. She thought about the girl she used to be, the girl who begged for approval, who mistook validation for love, who let doubt define her. That girl died the day her job ended. In her place stood a woman who understood that strength wasn't loud, wealth wasn't power, and freedom wasn't something granted by others. It was claimed, chosen, protected. Avery Lane no longer lived for applause, permission, or proof. She lived for purpose, clarity, and peace. Weeks later, she visited the beach in Maine, the one from the framed photo she once kept on her desk. She sat in the sand, the waves humming against the shore, and whispered, "Thank you for ending." Because sometimes the worst day of your life is the doorway to your freedom. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Avery smiled, gently, genuinely, for the first time without pain. The woman who once begged for space at the table now built entire rooms. The daughter who once signed away her worth now reclaimed it. Not through revenge. Through rebirth. The waves carried her whisper into the wind. "I'm free." When Avery returned from Maine, she stepped into her penthouse with a lighter heart. She opened the windows, letting the cool evening breeze sweep through the rooms like a cleansing tide. Then she turned to the documents spread across her marble counter. The Lane Initiative, her quiet revolution, was growing faster than she expected. A dozen women had already launched businesses through her grants. 10 more were awaiting review. Avery smiled as she read through a proposal from a single mother wanting to open a community tutoring center. "Approved," Avery whispered, signing her name at the bottom. She paused, thinking of the woman she once had been, the woman who asked for permission to dream. That woman was gone. The next morning, Avery met with Mr. Weston. "Your investments have stabilized," he told her. "You're in a position to expand the initiative nationally if you choose." Avery leaned forward. "I want to invest in women who never got a fair chance. Women who remind me of me." Weston nodded approvingly. "Then you will change lives." Avery walked home through downtown, watching the crowds, the movement, the pulse of a world that once terrified her. Now she felt part of it, rooted, present, unafraid. At home, she brewed tea and sat on her balcony. Her peace, once fragile as glass, now felt like stone. She didn't need validation from family or colleagues or old lovers. She didn't need applause. She needed purpose, and she had found it. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in tones of fire and forgiveness, Avery whispered a promise to herself. No more shrinking. And for the first time she truly understood what rebirth meant. News of the Lane initiative began to spread beyond state lines. Business blogs speculated about its mysterious funding. Economists praised its impact. Social media buzzed with gratitude from women who had received grants, mentors, and second chances. But Avery kept her name out of every headline. She preferred it that way. One morning, while reading new applications, Avery received a calendar invitation from a national conference for women in leadership. They wanted her as a keynote speaker, anonymous philanthropist or not. Avery hesitated. She wasn't the woman who once trembled in boardrooms, but the idea of standing before thousands felt enormous. That afternoon, she took a quiet walk through a botanical garden. She sat on a bench beneath blooming magnolias, inhaling their sweet scent. She closed her eyes and heard her old self, the Avery who let others dim her light. "You can't handle this," the memory whispered. But another voice rose, calm and confident. "You've handled everything they tried to break you with." When she opened her eyes, the world looked sharper. She accepted the invitation. The day of the conference arrived. Avery stepped onto the stage to a roar of applause she hadn't expected. She spoke not about wealth or betrayal or revenge, but about resilience. "Your story doesn't end when someone writes you off," she told the audience. "It ends when you stop believing them." After the speech, dozens of women approached her, some with tears, others with notebooks. Avery listened, comforted, guided. And for the first time, she felt not like the wounded woman who survived, but the architect of a new generation's survival. On the ride home she smiled softly. Purpose suited her. Autumn settled gently over the city. Leaves turned gold, drifting across sidewalks like small reminders of change. Avery spent her days reviewing proposals, visiting small businesses she'd funded, and refining her program's expansion. But life wasn't entirely work. She began exploring hobbies she had forgotten she loved. Photography, hiking, morning runs by the river. One crisp afternoon, she met a man named Lucas Reed while photographing a mural downtown. He was soft-spoken, warm-eyed, and thoughtful. "Framing is everything," he said, watching her angle her camera. Avery chuckled. "In pictures and life." Their conversation flowed easily. Lucas didn't ask what she did for work. He didn't ask where she lived or what she earned. He asked about her favorite books, the last place she traveled, the food she cooked when she was lonely. Avery found herself smiling. Really smiling. They exchanged numbers, but she didn't rush anything. That night, she sat on her balcony, thinking. She wasn't the woman who clung to relationships out of desperation. She wasn't waiting for someone to complete her. She was whole. Lucas was an addition, not a lifeline. One evening, Maddie texted unexpectedly. "I saw what you said at the conference. I watched the video. You were incredible." Avery read the message twice. She replied simply, "Thank you." Maddie wrote back, "I hope someday I can be as brave as you." Avery swallowed a lump in her throat. Maybe her family wasn't changing quickly, but change had begun. Quietly, carefully, like the first leaf that knows it's time to fall. December brought news Avery never expected. Parker and Rowe executives indicted in fraud case. Right below the headline was Nathan Hale's mugshot. He looked nothing like the man who once strutted through glass offices. He looked small, fragile, exposed. Avery closed the article calmly. Not with satisfaction. Not with cruelty. With release. "Some storms you don't have to fight," she whispered. "You just have to get out of the way." That evening, the board of the Lane initiative gathered for a small celebration. "We've secured national funding partnerships," Weston announced. "We're about to scale this program across 5 more states." Applause filled the room. Avery lifted her glass. "To women who rise," she said softly. Toast echoed back. Afterward, she slipped out onto the building's rooftop terrace. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky. The city glowed below, alive and endless. She wrapped her coat around her shoulders and breathed in the cold, sharp air. She thought about the woman she used to be, the woman who dialed her mother after losing her job, hoping for softness and receiving scorn. She wasn't angry anymore. She was grateful. Their doubt had shaped her strength. Their criticism had sharpened her clarity. Their absence had taught her independence. As snowflakes melted on her lashes, she whispered to the wind, "I choose peace. Peace, not revenge. Peace, not validation. Peace, not fear." And for the first time in her life, that choice felt permanent. A few weeks later, Avery found herself driving toward the house she had purchased for her parents, the home they reluctantly accepted after losing the Crestwood property. Karen had invited her over for coffee and a real conversation. Avery wasn't sure what to expect. When she arrived, Karen opened the door before Avery even knocked. Her mother looked older somehow, less polished, more human. "Come in," Karen said softly. Avery stepped inside. The house was warm, smelling faintly of cinnamon. Her father sat in his usual armchair. "Hi, kid," he said with a tired smile. Avery sat across from them. Karen took a slow breath. "We owe you an apology," she began. "For everything. For the way we talked to you. For the way we made you feel smaller when you were trying to grow." Avery glanced down, blinking away the sting in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I know we can't fix everything," Karen continued, voice trembling. "But we want to start over. If you'll let us." Avery nodded. "I'll meet you halfway." Her father exhaled with visible relief. "That's more than we deserve." They talked for hours. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but honestly. When Avery left, Karen hugged her gently. "I love you," she whispered. Avery hesitated, then hugged her back. "I love you too." It wasn't closure. It wasn't healing. It was the first brick in a bridge being rebuilt. The Lane Initiative officially expanded in the spring. 5 new states joined the program, bringing hundreds of applicants seeking hope, guidance, or simply someone to believe in them. Avery visited each state personally, not as a celebrity but as a mentor. During one trip, she met a young woman named Brianna who reminded her of herself. Sharp, determined, underestimated. "Everyone thinks I'm too ambitious," Brianna confessed. Avery smiled. "Ambition isn't a flaw. It's a direction." The young woman's eyes sparkled. "My family doesn't see it that way." Avery placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mine didn't either. Until I became someone they had no choice but to respect." Brianna swallowed hard. "Do you think I can succeed?" "I don't just think it," Avery said softly. "I see it." Avery left that meeting with something she hadn't expected. Joy. Real unfiltered joy. She had spent years drowning in fear of disappointing others. Now she was building a world where women didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's vision. That night, from her hotel balcony, Avery looked at the bright city below and realized something profound. She was finally living a life she didn't need to escape from. A life she had chosen. A life she had created. On a warm summer evening, Lucas invited Avery to a rooftop art show. String lights glowed overhead as artists displayed their work. Vibrant canvases of color, emotion, and story. Avery felt comfortable beside him, a feeling she hadn't known in years. "You look happier these days," Lucas said gently. She smiled. "I am. I think I finally unclenched from my old life." He nodded thoughtfully. "Pain makes you hold on to things that don't deserve you." Avery laughed softly. "You sound like my advisor." "Smart man," Lucas teased. They walked between displays, fingers brushing occasionally but never pushing for more. Avery liked that about him. His patience, his lack of pressure. At one point, they stopped before a painting of a woman standing at the edge of an ocean cliff. She looked terrified and powerful at the same time. "That was me," Avery whispered. Lucas tilted his head. "Not anymore." Her heart warmed. As the night ended, he walked her to her car. "Avery," he said quietly, "I don't want anything from you. I just enjoy your company." She didn't reply immediately. She simply reached out, took his hand and said, That's all I've ever wanted. They shared a small, meaningful moment. Gentle, unhurried. The beginning of something healthy, grounded, real. Autumn returned, and with it came the 1-year anniversary of Avery's lottery win. A date she hadn't planned to acknowledge. But as she sat at her desk reviewing a new proposal for a women-led tech startup, she realized she couldn't ignore the milestone. Not because of the money, but because the woman she'd become since that day deserved recognition. She closed her laptop and lit a candle. Lavender and cedarwood, her favorite scent for reflection. She pulled out her old journal and began reading the entries from a year ago. The lines were filled with confusion, pain, exhaustion, and desperation. She barely recognized the voice. As she turned the pages, her phone buzzed. A message from Maddie. "Thinking of you today. You've changed everything. I'm proud of you." Avery's eyes softened. She replied, "Thank you. I'm proud of you too." Moments later, another message appeared. This time from Tyler. "Working on myself. Sorry for being a jerk. Hope we can talk sometime." Avery's fingers hovered over the keys. "Let's start fresh," she typed. She didn't expect perfection. She just wanted forward motion. That night, Avery stood on her balcony, listening to the hum of the city. She whispered to herself, "1 year ago I broke. Today I build." And somewhere deep inside something settled. Peace not just felt but earned. Months later, Avery traveled back to Maine, the place where she had first whispered her gratitude to an ending disguised as disaster. She walked along the shoreline, the sand warm beneath her feet. The waves washed over her ankles, pulling away old tension with each retreat. She carried a small leather-bound notebook. Inside were handwritten letters, ones she had written to her past self. She tore one out and read it aloud. "You will lose things you think you need. You will keep things you never valued. And in the space between those truths, you will find yourself." Avery smiled softly. She folded the letter and placed it under a smooth stone. "Goodbye," she whispered. She wasn't saying goodbye to a place. She was saying goodbye to a version of herself she no longer needed. As she walked back toward the parking lot, her phone buzzed. "Lucas. Dinner tonight. I found a place with great seafood." Avery typed back. "Only if they have good pie." "They do," he replied. "Picking you up at 7. Avery felt warmth bloom in her chest. Not dependency, not fear, just the gentle excitement of choosing something and someone that didn't hurt. At the car, she turned for one last look at the beach. The sky was streaked with orange and gold like a blessing. "Thank you," she whispered again, but this time not to the past, to herself. A year and a half after losing her job, Avery Lane stood before the grand opening of the Lane Center, a brick-and-glass building dedicated to supporting women rebuilding their lives. Reporters gathered. Cameras flashed. Women she had helped stood proudly beside her. Lucas held her hand in the background, smiling quietly. Avery stepped to the microphone as the crowd hushed. "I once thought losing everything meant I had failed," she began. "But sometimes life clears your path for you. Not gently, not kindly, but truthfully." She paused, meeting the eyes of the women before her. "This center is for every woman who was told she wasn't enough. For every woman who had to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. For every woman who forgot her own voice trying to survive." The applause was soft at first, then thunderous. Avery continued, her voice steady and warm. "My story didn't begin the day I won something. It began the day I refused to lose myself." She cut the ribbon as cheers rose around her. Later, as she toured the building, she felt something she had never felt so fully before. Arrival. When she stepped outside, the sun kissed her face. Lucas wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "How does it feel?" he asked. Avery looked out at the city that had once crushed her and now carried her legacy. "It feels," she said slowly, "like I finally came home to myself." And with that, Avery Lane, the woman who once cried on her kitchen floor, who once watered down her soap, who once begged for a sliver of approval, smiled with a clarity that lit her from within. She wasn't just free. She was whole.